Hello everyone. In today's video, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the Yamaha MT-07, reflecting on my experience after riding it for 35,000 kilometers over a year and a half. I hope these insights are useful and feel free to discuss them. The video will be divided into 6 parts: why I chose the MT-07, what modifications were made, handling and braking, advantages, disadvantages, and finally, why I decided to sell it. First up is why I chose the MT-07. I remember back then I had just sold my previous bike, which was a large Taiwanese brand scooter. Initially, I was planning to buy Yamaha's X-Max 300, but then I thought, hey, since the price difference isn't too significant, why not try a motorcycle instead? It would be my first motorcycle and my first time purchasing one. Naturally, I wanted something that was both easy to buy and easy to sell. If I ended up not liking it, I could quickly get rid of it without losing too much money. With that in mind, I initially focused on middleweight Japanese street motorcycles or ones with a fairing. These types are usually affordable to maintain, quite reliable, and have a good resale market. The idea was that I could ride it for a few months or even a couple of years and then sell it without losing much money. I was considering options like the MT-07, SV650, Ninja 650, and CBR 650F, mostly from the 2015 to 2017 range. By 2021, when I was in the market, these models had already depreciated significantly. If I sold it after another year or two, I wouldn't lose much more in value. The bikes I considered were known for their reliability, popularity, and ease of maintenance, making them sensible choices. Next, let me explain why I ultimately chose to buy the MT-07. At that time, I was initially considering a twin-engine motorcycle. The reason is that, after comparing, I found that twin engines are more fuel efficient than inline fours. Among the options I was looking at, the only inline four was the CBR 650F, while the others were all twin-engine motorcycles. Twin engines save a significant amount of fuel, and they can run on 92-octane petrol, which is cheaper. So I opted for the MT-07 because over high mileage, you can save a lot on fuel costs and average consumption. Additionally, as a twin-engine motorcycle, the MT-07 is also relatively cheaper to maintain, which solidified my decision. Next is the front brake. At that time, I considered the MT-07 to have the best setup among the bikes I was considering because it comes with a 4-piston caliper. Although all 4 bikes are equipped with telescopic forks, only the MT-07 features a 4-piston caliper at the front, which I thought would offer better braking performance. That was another reason I chose the MT-07. Explanation of modified equipment. Now, I'll talk about some of the modifications and add-ons I made later on, and I'll explain why I installed them and roughly how much they cost. The first major upgrade I bought was a rear carrier and a top case. Since I frequently ride long distances, I realized that not having storage space was really inconvenient for me. At that time, a fellow rider happened to be selling a rear carrier along with a top case. If I remember correctly, he was selling the whole set for about 7,000 NTD, so I decided to buy it and installed it on my bike. However, after buying it, I discovered an issue. You need to drill holes in the fairing to install the rear carrier. The fairing needs to be drilled because the MT-07 doesn't have a rear grab handle. The rear carrier and top case I bought were still in fairly good condition since the previous owner hadn't had them for long before selling his bike and parting out the accessories. But when I got them, I found out that my bike's fairing wasn't pre-drilled. I either had to buy an original fairing with pre-drilled holes, which if I recall correctly was also quite expensive, or drill the holes myself, which might not turn out as neat. Normally, when you buy the rear carrier from the manufacturer, it comes with stickers that guide you on where to drill, but since I bought mine secondhand, it didn't include those stickers. Fortunately, I later found someone online who wanted to swap fairings. His fairing had the holes already drilled, while mine didn't, so we agreed to swap without any extra payment. We simply sent each other our fairings, and that solved the problem. I ended up getting an SH39 top case from Shaddy, which has a capacity of 39 liters. For long-distance rides, I can now just store all my gear in it, making the journey much more convenient. Around May 2022, I made a significant modification by upgrading to LED headlights. As we all know, the MT-07 uses halogen bulbs for nearly all its lights, except for the tail light. This includes the headlight, indicators, and so on. I personally felt that the stock halogen headlight wasn't adequate, so I decided to buy an LED headlight, which cost about 10,000 NTD. After installing the LED headlight, the performance improved significantly. The picture shows the difference. The first image is the low beam and the second one is the high beam. Personally, I think the result is quite good, but feel free to judge for yourselves based on these images. Additionally, I replaced all the indicators, both front and rear, with LED units, essentially converting all the lights on the bike, indicators, headlight, etc., to LEDs. Another modification I made was installing an Aries crash bar. When I first bought the bike, the previous owner had installed frame sliders, but I personally prefer crash bars. While frame sliders do offer protection, I believe crash bars are more reliable. In the event of a slide, frame sliders could potentially catch and cause the bike to flip, leading to even more damage. For this reason, I opted to replace the frame sliders with Aries crash bars. Handling and brakes. Next, I want to discuss my impressions of the MT-07 in terms of handling, throttle response, and braking. First, regarding the throttle, I find that this bike has a linear and well-controlled throttle. The power delivery is quite predictable based on how much throttle you apply, without any non-linear responses. There isn't a sudden surge or drop in power at any particular throttle position. The engine's output character is overall linear. However, I did notice that at higher revs, such as around 6,000 to 10,000 RPM, there is a bit more vibration. Since it doesn't have ride-by-wire, as it's from 2015, it uses a conventional mechanical throttle, which was common among Japanese middleweight street bikes at the time. Still, I think the MT-07's throttle response is quite good, predictable, controllable, and linear. Regarding the brakes, it features a pair of 4-piston calipers at the front. Among middleweight Japanese street bikes from that era, I consider this setup to be quite good. The feel from the brake lever combined with the axial mount cylinder is quite satisfactory. The braking response is proportional to how much you pull the lever, and it delivers the braking force accordingly. However, the overall feel might not be as refined as the radial mount cylinder and radial mount front brake calipers on the Ninja 1000 SX that I later bought. Nonetheless, it's still quite decent. The ABS activation is also quite noticeable. When the ABS kicks in, you can distinctly feel the brake lever pulsating, making the ABS operation very apparent. Handling. Next, let's discuss the handling. I find that the MT-07 has a very distinct characteristic when it comes to handling. It is exceptionally agile. On both regular roads and twisty mountain routes, you can swiftly change direction, whether you're turning left, right, or navigating through a series of bends. You can clearly feel its agility, allowing you to quickly adjust its direction and tackle bends with ease. When leaning into corners, you can easily alter the lean angle, for instance, moving from a 10-degree lean to 20, 30, or even 40 degrees, or from 40 degrees back to 20 and then to 0. With the linear and well-controlled throttle, I believe this bike is very approachable in terms of overall handling. Whether you're a novice or someone with extensive riding experience, perhaps having accumulated 200,000 or 300,000 kilometers, you'll find the MT-07 easy to manage. It doesn't require you to fight it or wait for it to respond. It just does what you ask. If you direct it to turn left, the MT-07 immediately follows your command. If you use this bike for regular commuting, such as long trips or daily rides, you'll find that it accelerates quickly and can easily escape from traffic. Its throttle response is brisk, yet controlled, avoiding any sensation of the bike being unruly or overly aggressive. It's responsive and linear, making it easy to handle. Its agility is particularly advantageous in urban environments, where you won't feel burdened by a heavy or cumbersome bike. Regarding the bike's center of gravity, I feel that the MT-07's center of gravity is positioned slightly below and forward from the rider. It doesn't feel as central as the Aprilia Shiver 750, which has a more central balance. The MT-07 is slightly forward compared to the Shiver 750, but not as much as the Ninja 1000 SX, which feels more front-heavy in comparison. Advantages. Next, I want to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of the MT-07 after riding it for this mileage, starting with the advantages. Advantages. The first advantage is that it was the lightest bike in its class at the time. By its class, I mean Japanese middleweight street bikes from around 2015 to 2017. At that time, the MT-07 had a wet weight of 182 kilograms, while the SV650 was 197 kilograms, the Ninja 650 was 193 kilograms, and the CBR 650F was 211 kilograms. Clearly, the MT-07 was the lightest among these Japanese middleweight bikes. Additionally, one reason I chose the MT-07 was its rear tire width of 180 millimeters. I believe that a rear tire with a width of 180 millimeters provides more options for tire models. From my observations, many major tire manufacturers release new tire sizes in 180 millimeters and 190 millimeters first. This means I could access newer tires more quickly, which is why the 180 millimeter rear tire width of the MT-07 was an important factor in my decision. The second advantage is its fuel efficiency. Over the 30,000 plus kilometers I rode, I found that in pure city riding, it averaged about 17 to 18 kilometers per liter. On the highway, the consumption ranged from about 16 to 32 kilometers per liter. The wide range in fuel consumption is due to significant differences in fuel efficiency depending on headwinds or tailwinds. For instance, fuel consumption could vary by over 10 kilometers per liter under different wind conditions, even when riding at the same speed. Therefore, the highway figure of 16 to 32 kilometers per liter largely depends on whether you're riding with or against the wind, as well as your speed. Overall, my combined average fuel consumption, including city and highway riding, was around 22 kilometers per liter, which I consider quite fuel efficient for a middleweight bike. Advantages. Third advantage. I believe that one of the advantages is the wide range of aftermarket parts available, which are also easy to obtain. The MT-07 sold very well globally, so it's no surprise that there is a vast array of aftermarket parts for it, and they are readily available. Most shops will not charge excessively for these parts, and you can even install them yourself without too much difficulty, as the installation process is fairly straightforward. Thus, the wide availability of affordable and easy-to-install aftermarket parts is a significant advantage. Fourth advantage. Another advantage is the ease and cost-effectiveness of maintenance. According to the manufacturer's service manual, the MT-07 only requires servicing every 10,000 kilometers, compared to some other bikes that may require service every 6,000 or even 5,000 kilometers. 10,000 kilometers is quite a long interval. Additionally, the MT-07's maintenance requirements are relatively simple. The twin engine has only 2 spark plugs, and the oil change volume is not excessive. Even if the service is performed by a non-Yamaha dealer, it is generally straightforward and not overly expensive, as this bike does not have complex electronic systems. Parts such as clutch plates, chains, tires, and sprockets are easily available online or from local bike shops, and they do not require special tools for installation. This makes it convenient to find many options for maintenance and repairs, often at a reasonable cost, particularly if you are familiar with a trusted local shop. Overall, the maintenance costs for this bike are quite affordable. Fifth advantage. Finally, I find that riding the MT-07 gives a great sense of enjoyment. Personally, I find it a very happy and relaxing experience. This is a subjective advantage, but it is certainly something I appreciate about the bike. Disadvantages. Next, I'll discuss the drawbacks of the MT-07 based on my experience riding it. 1. Difficulty starting. One issue is that the MT-07 can be difficult to start. I noticed that several people I know who own the MT-07 also had trouble getting their bikes started. While they always managed to start them eventually, it often took longer for the starter motor to engage at first. I got used to it, but it's something to be aware of. 2. Thin front seat. Another drawback is the thinness of the front seat. My bike is a 2015 model, and I haven't modified or padded the seat. I found that after sitting for extended periods, especially on long rides, the thin seat can become uncomfortable. For longer trips, the lack of cushioning becomes quite noticeable, leading to discomfort. 3. Impact on handling with top case. When fitted with a top case, the MT-07's handling is noticeably affected. I'm not sure if this issue is specific to the MT-07 or if it affects other models as well, but I experienced it after installing a rear rack and top case. When carrying items in the top case, it shifts the center of gravity noticeably away from the rider, making the bike feel less balanced and impacting its handling. 4. Suspension setup. The suspension's damping could be improved. The bike tends to wobble and sway, creating a noticeable circular rocking sensation. I don't understand why other models in the MT series have upgraded to upside-down forks, while the MT-07, from its first release in 2014 to the present 2024 model, still uses conventional forks. Frame rigidity. The rigidity of the frame seems to be on the lower side, resulting in more wobbling. While a more flexible frame contributes to the bike's agility, the trade-off is reduced rigidity, which can affect stability. Although the bike's flexibility is a positive aspect, it may be due to the frame's less rigid design. 6. Steel rear swing arm. The sixth drawback is the steel rear swing arm. In the Japanese middleweight category, it seems that most bikes use steel swing arms, so there isn't much to complain about. The only exception I noted was the Honda CBR 650F from that era, which had an aluminum swing arm. However, bikes like the Ninja 650 and SV 650 all feature steel swing arms, so this is quite standard and not particularly objectionable. Number 7. Limited electronics. The seventh issue is that the MT-07's electronic systems are quite basic. It only has ABS, which was an optional feature at the time. However, the models imported to Taiwan were all equipped with ABS as standard. Other electronic aids such as traction control, TCS, power modes, or ride-by-wire are absent. There is no quick shifter for both upshifts and downshifts, only for upshifts. At the time, most Japanese middleweight bikes had mechanical throttles rather than ride-by-wire, so this was not unusual. ABS was available on many models then and continues to be common now. Given the price and the era, this level of electronics is acceptable. Fuel tank design. The eighth disadvantage is the design of the fuel tank. The tank itself is metal, but it is covered by a plastic shell with a particular shape. I could never find a comfortable position for my legs, regardless of how I sit or where I place my feet. The shape of the plastic cover does not seem well thought out for ergonomics, making it difficult to grip comfortably. This issue seems to persist even today. 9. Foot peg position. The ninth drawback is the position of the foot pegs. When shifting your weight, the foot pegs can get in the way of your calves. Whether moving forward or backward, it never quite feels right. This might be related to individual height or leg length ratios, but from my experience, the foot peg placement is awkward. I considered moving the foot pegs back, but doing so could result in excessive knee bending, which may not necessarily improve comfort. Overall, the original foot peg positioning is quite awkward. 10. Halogen lighting. The 10th issue is that the entire bike uses halogen lighting with the exception of the tail light. While this can be addressed, indicator lights are easy to upgrade, and although the headlight upgrade can be costly, it is generally feasible. The cost of upgrading to LED lights can be high. Why I sold the MT-07. Finally, I want to explain why I decided to sell the MT-07. Reasons for selling the MT-07. 1. Lack of fairing. The first reason is that the MT-07 does not have a fairing. I often ride long distances, and at high speeds with headwinds, the lack of a fairing made the ride quite exhausting. The continuous wind blast made it tiring to fend off the wind, which was the primary reason for selling. 2. No storage space. The second reason is the absence of storage space on the MT-07. Most motorcycles are similar in this regard. If you install a top box, in my experience, it significantly affects handling, and side cases are relatively small. While the MT-07 can be fitted with side cases, I didn't want to install the required racks, and there were no factory options available, so this was a factor in my decision to sell. Number 3, desire to experience ride-by-wire and quick shifters. The third reason is that I wanted to experience ride-by-wire and quick shifters for both upshifts and downshifts. At the time, my brother had bought a Ninja 1000 SX, which had these features. I was interested in experiencing them over a longer period and understanding the overall control feel with ride-by-wire and other electronic aids. Number 4, desire to experience upside-down forks and radial mount brake calipers. The fourth reason is my interest in experiencing upside-down forks and radial mount brake calipers, which the MT-07 lacks. I wanted to see how these components affect braking feel and handling. Number 5, adjustable rear suspension preload. The fifth reason is related to frequently fitting a top box for commuting, while normally I use a backpack or similar. The weight distribution at the rear of the bike frequently changes, and having an adjustable rear suspension preload mechanism would be beneficial for balancing the bike. If the MT-07 needed an aftermarket rear shock with preload adjustment, the cost would have been several $1,000s, which didn't seem cost-effective compared to the value of the bike. In summary, I needed a sports tourer at that time, which includes features such as adjustable preload, storage space, and a larger fuel tank. These are aspects that a sports tourer can offer more comprehensively, considering the direction I was aiming for. So after reviewing various models, I decided to sell the MT-07 and later purchased a sports tourer, the Ninja 1000 SX. I have made a video explaining why I chose this model, so those interested can watch it. The comparison with the MT-07 shows that different preferences and needs might require different bikes. For example, if you need flexibility, fuel efficiency, and don't mind missing some features, the MT-07 is an excellent bike. I'm not saying the MT-07 is bad, but for my needs, a sports tourer better met my requirements. However, now in 2024, I believe the MT-07 is still a great bike at its core. But given the current market, bikes like the CB750 Hornet, GSX 8S, or Duke 790 might offer better options compared to the MT-07. For instance, these models come with more electronics, such as at least TCS and ride-by-wire, and some even feature quick shifters for both upshifts and downshifts. The GSX 8S, for example, comes with a quick shifter as standard. If you value having more electronic aids, these options might be preferable. Even if you don't use all the features, having them available could enhance your enjoyment. For instance, the CB750 Hornet weighs 190 kilograms, which isn't excessively heavy, and it offers substantial power. So for 2024, the MT-07 might not have changed significantly since its debut in 2014. There could be updates like transmission improvements, LED headlights, throttle optimizations, or a new instrument panel, but in the increasingly competitive middleweight market, the MT-07's previous advantages may not be as pronounced anymore. Thank you for watching this far. This video is nearly at its end. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in motorcycle content, free to subscribe to our channel. If you have any thoughts, please leave a comment below and we might discuss and exchange ideas. That's all for this video. Bye-bye.